Welcome to the TFO podcast, where guests get to give their thoughts, feelings, and opinions on a variety of subjects. This podcast is hosted by your very own Stacy Cook, and as always, sponsored by Fool's Guide Life Coaching. Follow me on all social media platforms. So give it up for our guest today. Yeah.
So, I was on a card with Seth Rollins. I was on a card with AJ Styles. I got to meet Ric Flair, Tommy Wildfire, Rich. I wrestled the Barbarian. I saw him on WrestleMania when I was, a sophomore in high school, and he clotheslined Tito Santana, won the match, and then 6 years later, I'm in a tag match wrestling the Barbarian. I had some cool things, wrestling Moline and Mercado, seeing those young Hispanic kids look at me like I was Tony Atlas.
Yeah.
My arms were 23. I probably am. It's weird. It's weird for me to think that way, but my kids are like, Dad, they want your mask. Most kids, if they know anyone, they might know Rey Mysterio, but most of them don't know that they know you. You're Latin Thunder. You're the one that went to the Loaiza County Fair. You're the one that went to Moline and wrestled. So you're the lucha guy for them, and you got the guns, and you're in shape, and this and that. I'm like, well, that's cool,
I want you're telling that, tell it to yourself. Because when you're telling me you have regret, I don't get it, because you did all of that. You just told me all the things you did, how you felt, how other people feel about your success. I think that's crazy to me.
I did some cool stuff, but I tell you what, this whole journey, one of them was think big, dream big. Because if you think big and you only get half, you still, you got to wrestle Madison Square Garden, or you got to do some really cool stuff, right? And that's another lesson where I learned from the people. Seth Rollins was just this kid who was doing really well. He was, he's got a future. He's wrestling for 2 years. Everyone's saying he's really good. And I went to his MySpace, and he had on there, his goal was to headline WrestleMania. And that was a lesson there where it was like, hey, think big. So now when I think about writing, I tell myself sometimes, I'll catch myself like, well, maybe I'll just write a little bit, maybe I'll sell a book or two. No, you need to think big. And then if you only do half, that's still a pretty cool life. So,
interesting thing about some of this is that even when you think big, there's going to be some hurdles. There's going to be some things that you didn't even realize needed to take place. And if you don't figure out a way to make it over, under, around those things, it's going to derail you. And then it'll make you start thinking differently about it. I remember when I got my book, I had it printed, I'm feeling good. I'm like, I'm going out to Barnes & Noble, talk to the people, and have them put some books out there. And I'm going to sell some books in Barnes & Noble. How hard can this be? I walk in, and they're like, it doesn't work that way. You need to have a literary agent. You need to have, and if you don't sell in this amount and this much, so you need advertising, because if I put this out in Barnes & Noble in California, no one knows you, that book sits there. Then we ship them back to you, and you got to pay the shipping, and you start going, wait a minute. They did. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not what I had in mind. It does make you have to second guess the process. It's not that you don't have the talent. It's just like, I have the book in hand, the book is good. It's the other stuff. So,
but it was like that author that I read the book about being a great writer and artist. He called it resistance. That's an example of resistance where you go, hey, I want to do this, and that's just life pushing you back. That's resistance. And he's like, the artist has to overcome that resistance. And anytime you try to do something that's creative or anything like that, anything that's cool like that, you'll get resistance. And he's like, you have to expect it.
How about we call that the chops? Because it really is because when you said that we started off with 25 people, we give them all the chops, 5 stay and the rest of them go. That's really what some of these hurdles end up being. It's we can't let everybody put books in Barnes & Noble. Somebody's got to overcome some of these hurdles if they want to have their books in there, and that's really it.
The thing though about thinking big that I thought that resonated with me is the person that said, when it gets tough, if you're not thinking big, so like my big goal I had in pro wrestling, what I told like Marty Jannetty, I pick him up at the airport, he's like, oh, what do you want to do? Well, I'd like to have a dark match with the WWE, which is just a match where you're not on TV and they evaluate you. And then if they evaluate you and think you're any good, you get more. Maybe you'll get signed, then you get sent here, blah, blah, blah. that's the biggest dream I had. And the guy that said, think big, he said, if you're having a really tough time, like you've been doing this for 3 years, you're hitting the gym, you're working really hard, and you go wrestle in Indiana and the promoter doesn't pay you, it's a really bad night. And maybe you got hurt, right? If your dream is to have a dark match, but if your dream is, I want to headline WrestleMania, you need something so big that sometimes gets you excited during those tough times, which I hadn't thought of that until I read that guy say that, you know.
What was your favorite match ever? That was it. Whether it be that you wrestled the person that you like I always wanted to wrestle that guy and I finally got my chance, or this person was the biggest star, or I did my best performance. Like what is that?
You're gonna hate my answer.
No, I'm not.
I don't have one. I don't have one.
Give me some.
When I wrestled the tag match, it was me and Chuck Palumbo against the Barbarian and another friend of mine, James the Bear Grizzly from Kansas City, Mo. And it was the first name I had ever wrestled, the Barbarian, and he was a big dude, and I'd seen him on WrestleMania, and so I was nervous. And it was just, we had a great match in front of 500 people. Harley Race booked us, one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time. And Harley said, hey, that was a great match, you guys did good. He booked me because I was Hispanic, I spoke Spanish on the radio, I had to work hard to do that and improve that. I learned a lot that match. So, and then Chuck Palumbo was this guy who was like 6'4", looked like Tarzan. He took off his shirt and I was like, man, I don't know if I'm ever gonna be in the WWE. I went out in intermission to sign autographs and like 5 ladies says, where's your tag partner at, you know? That showed me the star power because I didn't have any. I was like, I watched the match and I'm like, yeah, we had a great match. Yeah, Harley said it was the best match of the night, but I don't look like a star compared to these guys, you know? And then I wrestled at Mercado and Moline against a guy who was a really good young pro wrestler, and it was just a great crowd, and it was, you know, Hispanic festival, and we just had a great match. I was in shape. My son was there to watch it. We made a lot of money. Money's important to me. I like making some money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I won the SCW tag titles with Steve Manders once in Walcott, and my wife and kids were there. It was the first title I'd ever won, which was, you know, I wasn't that. But still, my kids were there.
Yeah.
That's what was cool. They saw me and my wife was there, and Steve played for the Hawkeyes. He played Division I football as a walk-on, and I learned a lot from him, just that toughness he had. His work ethic, again, were the lessons. Here I am in my mid-40s, and I'm like, man, this guy's just used to hard work.
Yeah.
This is just like...
If he played football for the Hawkeyes, you know he was playing
as a walk-on, and you couldn't, you know, you're talking about those chops, you couldn't hit Steve too hard. He never complained. He never said, we got their money, Juan. You couldn't hit him too hard. You could hit him as hard as you wanted, and he was just fine with it, you know? And it was just like, wow. These guys are at another level, you know, and his conditioning was top notch. So it was cool to do that. And then the match that I had with Kevin, Cornboy, the Mask versus Hair, it was also just we had a great match. I worked really hard to get in shape for it. And, you know, even my sister and different people were like, man, when you got clothesline outside the ring, I was worried about you. You know, because they'd seen me wrestle some matches the last couple of years that were a little bit, you know, easier on my body, and they were like, we could tell this was different. So it was a cool match. Yeah, it was cool. But they all have some nice memories. So many of them do, you know. Yeah. Even the bad ones were still, you know, you're still doing what you love. So
what do your kids think about their dad being a celebrity?
See, I think in their eyes, I'm not much of a celebrity, but a little bit. My son, more than my daughter, will be like, you know, hey, I wore my Latin Thunder hoodie and people want one. Or, you know, they think it's cool that my dad's Latin Thunder, you know. And, you know, I think it's just always been wrestling is just, you know, my wife, Tia, she posted on Facebook when, you know, I'll wrestle just a couple more matches, but I announced my retirement when I lost the match. And she posted for the entirety of our marriage, you know, wrestling's been a big part of it. And for my kids, that's just always been something that Dad did. And I even asked my daughter, she's 14, I was like, do you remember me wrestling before the mask? And she's like, no. She's like, all I remember is Latin Thunder, the luchador, you know. And I think my son, since he's a boy, he's a little bit more, thinks it's kind of cool and neat, and he's starting to learn to enjoy pumping iron and working out. But neither of them love pro wrestling. Neither of them particularly, you know, like it. which is fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, I forbade them. I was like, you're not allowed to be pro wrestlers. The only people allowed to be pro wrestlers are people who love it, because otherwise it's too dangerous, it's too hard, and it'll break your heart. So it's okay if you love it, because that's a different journey, right? It's okay because music will break your heart. Trying to do that, you know, trying to be a pro wrestler will break your heart, but chasing any of those dreams is like that. But there's something still beautiful about it if you love it.
Yeah.
Just know, being on stage is part of that development of I'm going to get better. No matter what, I'm going to get better. If I'm in there with, you know, Harley Race, I was the great from 1977 to 1981. He's the greatest pro wrestler on the face of the earth. It's kind of cool to meet someone. And you know, he booked me 5 times, and he left me a message on my phone, and it was cool. It was Harley Race. Yeah. To meet someone who was the best in the world at what he did. And I met Butch Reed, who was a great African-American football player and wrestler in Kansas City, and I was sitting next to him, and I'm like, what was it like to wrestle Harley? And he's like, oh man. He says, all he did, he just had move after move and move after move. He says, but man, that's how I got a lot better. He says, after 7 years of working with guys like Harley, that's when I really felt like I learned my craft and knew it, you know. But that if you don't put yourself in that position to be in there with the best, I mean,
you don't ever know.
You don't get to improve. And like you said, I've had a cool career and a cool life, but it's just like what you said. That guy that can walk away and say, hey, I gave it everything. I worked as hard as I could to learn my craft. That's where I've got those moments of regret where I know I just didn't give it that full attention, especially during my youth. But
Juan, as a life coach, I'm saying take that and put it to something else. And when you start talking about your writing, write your 10 pages.
Yeah.
Write your 10 pages, because then you won't regret it. What you'll do is say, everything I learned from wrestling, I was able to put over into this, and this is where I was supposed to be. This is that part of the walk
was just a journey.
That gave me some stuff that I put in my backpack, so that when I start my writing, this is when I'm going to give it my 10 pages a day. You will write that story the way you see it through the mask, and then that's going to be the great book that you have. And then eventually you'll be like, I didn't have to wrestle to have that success. I was able to take what I knew about that, everything about, the big move, or the chop that nobody wants. All of that is gonna translate over into
for creating a great character. Yeah.
All of that. Yeah. Those things you put in your backpack are just sitting there waiting for you to conjure that up some other way. And then when you do it, it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, as long as I put the work in, which I have.
10 pages, young man.
Right.
10 pages.
Yep.
10
every day. Every day I got to write. Yeah.
So.